We're just getting this recording. Thanks for coming, for tuning in with us on this lovely March evening. Before I go any further, I do just want to take a moment to thank our program sponsor for this evening. We have a special energy efficiency sponsor to Tin Mountain Programming, and that is the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation's John F. and Dorothy H. McCabe Environmental Fund. So we appreciate their sponsorship of the Tin Mountain Energy team and the work that we are doing. And we are very excited this evening to have representatives from Clean Energy New Hampshire and New Hampshire DES helping us to present, as well as a panelist of local EV drivers helping to present this consumer's guide to electric vehicles. And I am going to hand things over to Brianna Fiorello from Clean Energy New Hampshire to kick things off.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nora. And thank you for bringing us in to help on this program. It's been very exciting. This is one of my favorite topics to be able to talk about. So welcome, everybody. Thrilled to be here. As Nora said, my name is Brianna Fiorillo, and I am the Senior Program Director with Clean Energy New Hampshire. We're a statewide nonprofit that focuses on clean energy and energy efficiency and clean tech education and advocacy. And as part of that, I also run our initiative called Drive Electric New Hampshire, which focuses on promotion and awareness of EVs, as you'll hear a lot about tonight. And I'm thrilled to be here, again, talking about one of my favorite topics. So just a quick overview of the agenda of what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to talk about just some overview of some EV topics with myself and with Jessica Wilcox from Granite State Clean Cities, who I'm thrilled to be working with again on this. Then we're going to go into, as Nora said, we have an excellent panel of local EV drivers that are going to share a lot of their experiences and insights on various different topics, including different charging types and infrastructure, road trips, snow handling, any and all things that you could probably want to know or may not have thought that you would want to know. They will probably be covering. And then we'll be closing out with an opportunity for questions and answers, again, with some of those local drivers, so you can hear directly from your peers, get all your questions asked, and we'll close out with a few resources if you want to learn more. So with that, I will hand it over to Jessica to kick us off.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Brianna. And hi, everybody. I had the pleasure actually of presenting at a 2018 Tin Mountain Eco Forum, and it's great to be back with this group again. As Brianna said, I'm Jessica Wilcox. I'm a transportation program specialist at in the Air Resources Division at the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. And I'm also the coordinator for the Granite State Clean Cities Coalition. So we call ourselves NHDES and GSCCC. So you'll hear me refer to those throughout the presentation today. And Granite State Clean Cities Coalition is a program that's hosted at New Hampshire DES. So it's great to have everything under one roof. So in this presentation, I want to spotlight a unique electric vehicle effort that New Hampshire is participating in, and also how electric vehicles, or EVs as we tend to call them, are transforming transportation. Now, with the impact of COVID on our well-being and our wallets, this is especially important because EVs benefit both the environment and economics. Next slide, please. So electric vehicles offer benefits both to the environment and to the consumer because they have no tailpipe emissions when running on electricity. And even when you include power plant emissions, EVs reduce pollutants such as nitrogen oxides or NOx. And over half of the pollutants that cause summertime smog and poor air quality days is NOx emissions from cars and trucks. Additionally, EVs emit fewer greenhouse gases, or GHGs, than gasoline-powered vehicles. And the GHG reductions from EVs will become even greater as a higher portion of electricity is produced by renewable sources. Now, New Hampshire has a relatively clean electricity mix, and that's thanks to our participation in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, or RGGI, if you've heard of it. Next slide, please. Now, as you may know, the transportation sector is the largest source of GHG emissions in New Hampshire. And this is why transportation electrification is a key strategy for achieving air quality and climate goals and for integrating renewable energy into that transportation sector. Next slide, please. EVs are here, they're affordable, and they're beneficial to our health and the environment. Today, there are over 40 different electric vehicle models available just in the Northeast alone. Now, why the focus on EVs? The simple truth is that electric technology is more efficient for moving vehicles and people around, and it's getting better every day. Now, according to the US Department of Energy's fueleconomy.gov website, EVs convert over 77% of the electrical energy that they get from the grid to power at the wheels. Conventional gasoline vehicles convert maybe about 12 to 30% of that energy stored in gasoline to turning those wheels. EVs have no tailpipe emissions, fewer moving parts compared to conventional vehicles. That means no oil changes, no spark plugs, no fuel components or emissions equipment. And as a result, they only need to be serviced once or twice a year to check, vehicle systems and rotate the tires. Next slide, please. Now, on average, thanks to fuel and maintenance savings, it costs about half as much to drive an EV compared to a similar vehicle that runs on gasoline. The US Department of Energy's e-gallon tool shows that it costs 50 cents more to fuel with gasoline in New Hampshire. What's more, the cost of EV batteries has decreased from over $1,100 per kilowatt hour in 2010 to just $156 per kilowatt hour in 2019, and this is continuing to fall. And as it does, so will the price of EVs. Next slide, please. So NHDES took up the charge, no pun intended, by installing an EV charging station and incorporating plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, or PHEVs, into our fleet. Now, PHEVs have an internal combustion engine, but still require less maintenance than conventional cars because the engines are used less, and regenerative braking means less wear and tear on the brakes. Now, our intent is to purchase 1 or 2 all-electric vehicles as allowed by budget constraints. And to prepare for this, DES has secured a federal grant for charging at 2 state office locations in Concord and either the Flume Gorge or Cannon Mountain ski area in Franconia Notch. So stay tuned on that. Next slide, please. Now, there are 2 types of plug-in electric vehicles. I just want to do a quick and dirty EV 101 with you folks. Plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, or PHEVs, are much like conventional hybrid vehicles in that they have both an electric motor and a gas engine. But unlike regular hybrids, they can be plugged into charge and can run 15 to 25 miles just on electric. When the battery charge runs out, the gas engine kicks in, keeping that vehicle running seamlessly. Now, the last time I looked, our Prius Primes were getting over 70 miles a gallon, so not too shabby. Next slide, please. Battery electric vehicles, or BEVs, are pure electric, powered only by 1 or more electric motor. Now, they can only go as far as their battery charge will allow them, which is why charging stations are so important. Now, we've gone from having only a few EV models to a few dozen, with ranges from about 70 miles to over 300. Next slide. Now, major automakers, and you're probably hearing these announcements, they're increasing their investments and their commitments to electrification. Volvo was the first mainstream automaker to make an EV commitment, and they recently announced that they intend to sell only electric vehicles by 2030. Ford announced that they were scaling up their electric investments and intend to introduce 40 new full electric and hybrid vehicles, including an electric pickup truck, by 2022. Daimler, maker of Mercedes, announced that it will bring more than 10 different all-electric vehicles to the market and plans to electrify their entire portfolio also by 2022. And General Motors recently declared its intention to sell only zero-emission vehicle by 2035. And then Toyota is aiming to offer every model in the Toyota and Lexus lineup around the world available as either a fully electric model or with an electrified option by 2025. Next slide. So the market is growing. And as we're looking ahead, fuel and technology diversification is going to be integral to meeting our goals. Companies like Automani, Motive Power Systems, and XL Fleet, which is headquartered in Mass, they work with automakers like Ford Motor Company to integrate plug-in hybrid upfits and zero emissions electric powertrains and propulsion systems in some of your favorite and familiar commercial fleet vehicles like step vans, work trucks, etc. Hino, a Toyota subsidiary offering diesel electric class 4 to class 8, recently announced a new lineup of zero emissions class 4 to class 8. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this with California's recent mandate that requires all new medium and heavy duty vehicles to be zero emission vehicles by 2045. And what's more, 14 other states and the District of Columbia jumped on board and committed to a joint memorandum of understanding to support the phasing out of diesel vehicles by 2050. Next slide, please. So electric is a great option in other applications like refuse trucks, forklifts, street sweepers. Next slide. And on the larger end, buses and long-haul trucks. In fact, Nashua Transit Systems uses a hybrid electric transit bus in their fleet right now and is, I think, looking to move even further into electrification. Next slide. GSCCC is spreading the word about electric vehicles, and we do this through education and outreach, such as ride and drive events during conferences, National Drive Electric Week. We're part of the Drive Electric New Hampshire group with Brianna. And I'd like to share a testimonial from one of our prior ride and drive event attendees. This is his words. When someone told me last year that my next vehicle would be an electric car, I would have laughed at them. But here I am, a year and 20,000 miles later, a Chevy Bolt owner. I thought electric cars were luxuries for people wanting to show off how green they were. But owning solar panels and wanting to embrace options for cost-effective driving, I was thrilled that Bank Chevrolet was showcasing their offerings. Mike Mercer, the service manager, was able to focus on all aspects, and a year later, what he was selling holds true. Highlights from that testimonial include 0 to 60 in 6.2 seconds, close to zero maintenance due to no engine and transmission, not having to stop at gas stations, which he didn't realize how great that was until COVID. And many apps track, and almost all hotels have charging stations. Now, change isn't easy, but if nothing else, this year has proven that we are adaptable and capable of change. Next slide, please. So as coordinator for Granite State Clean Cities Coalition, I'm working in support of vehicle fleet transitions to cleaner, more efficient options, including electric vehicles and other alternative fuel vehicles. So this includes participating on different committees and coalitions and strategies. And one in particular that I want to share with you is my participation on the steering committee for the Drive Change, Drive Electric, or DCDE campaign. It's an EV awareness campaign and a unique public and private partnership between Northeast states and major automakers. This is the intersection of EV efforts happening both here in the state and regionally. This multi-pronged campaign targets consumers based on research into their behaviors and perceptions of EV purchasers and the general public, and is gleaned from existing studies and consumer surveys initiated by the campaign's PR firm. Our website, you're gonna have to check it out, driveelectricus.com. It's our welcome mat. And we use social media along with tentpole moments, which are kind of like these buzzworthy media moments, to drive our audience to the website and to accelerate media coverage. Next slide, please. So now here's an example of what our social media campaign looked like back when we started and launched this campaign in 2018. Notice the use of the vehicle silhouette, which speaks to the brand agnostic efforts of the campaign. Next slide, please. And now here are examples of what it's grown to today. We're highlighting the technology, we're incorporating video, we're creating content that drives engagement. Next slide, please. Now in 2019, we launched our signature program called Destination Electric, which highlights EV-friendly businesses and destinations that have charging stations nearby. They're identified by a badge posted at the entrance or on a table tent card. Now this addressed a key barrier. 83% of Northeasterners don't think that there's enough public charging stations. So all 7 of the campaign states participated in this program, and in New Hampshire, we selected certain communities. We had to kind of narrow it down. We started off with Nashua, Dover, and Portsmouth, and we worked to create partnerships and perform outreach within those communities. This was a no-cost commitment on behalf of the businesses, and at launch, we had 100+ businesses signed on, with over 40 of them in New Hampshire alone. Today, we have 190+ businesses participating, and we're still growing. Next slide, please. Now, Portsmouth is considered a marquee community and received a unique Green City Guide, which highlighted kind of a staycation road trip for New Hampshire and New Englanders. This was launched this past summer and provided a list of participating destinations to explore during a day trip, with, of course, appropriate COVID precautions in place. We wanted to show that the EV lifestyle is possible and tangible. Basically, you can get there in an EV. Next slide, please. Now, in the past year, the program executed 3 tentpole moments. Tom Papa videos, which I'll talk about more on the next slide, a latest news webpage on our website, and those Green City Guides, which I told you about. And these spotlight those Destination Electric marquee communities and create a new site on a new page on our website that editorializes that EV lifestyle component we really want to capture. We also, 3, we're preparing to launch a creative way to show all of the EV choices that are becoming available, because there's new announcements and there's more vehicles coming. Next slide, please. So Tom Papa, this is a comedian who recently put out a Netflix stand-up comedy special. And bonus for us, he owns an EV. So what he was telling was true. He was talking from his own experiences. We wanted an educational comedy video that was relatable, and we wanted our host to be able to monologue, particularly with COVID. So we landed on this comedian, Tom Papa, due to both his personal experience driving an EV, as well as his presentation style. He's just authentic. Next slide, please. We heavily promoted this video series for 6 weeks through social media and YouTube. These Tom Papa videos earned over 795,000 views. And we ended up creating these 15 and 30-second video cut downs, which, for example, illustrated key points about how far you can go on a single charge. These shorter clips were watched to almost 100% of the time, whereas the longer episodes saw about 50% of time. And what this means is, compared to industry standards for folks tuning in, these numbers mean success. They prove that these videos were effective in engaging, entertaining, and keeping the audience's attention. So as we're looking ahead into the year, we plan to continue with this tentpole moment approach, because it does get press interested. They're seeing data come out of these. They're seeing interesting things to talk about and write about. And the more that the press prints these stories, the more people are getting tuned in. So we're also looking to revamp the Vehicle Explorer tool. So this is a great tool. We've got, like I mentioned, all these vehicles available in the Northeast alone. And if you're curious about, which vehicles are plug-in hybrids, which vehicles are battery electric, you can sort, you can look at body styles. I check it out, tune in and look at it. So we're hoping to kind of revamp that. And we're working with automakers. So they're giving us pictures and telling us what's here and what's coming. We're also going to be working over the next couple of months to build out our program plans, generate new momentum, and continue to plan our strategy. Next slide. So moving forward, I hope that this information inspires you, encourages you, and that you leave tonight's program charged up, I know, pun intended, and willing to start driving electric. So thank you for that. And now I will turn it back over to Brianna, and thank you for your time.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jessica. And I have to say, the comedian videos that Jessica was mentioning really are quite funny and enjoyable in addition to being educational. So I'd encourage you to check them out on YouTube or on the website. So I am going to elaborate just on a few topics that Jessica went over and do a little bit of a deeper dive into some electric vehicles that you may see out on the roads right now, and some that you may be seeing commercials for in the next year plus. My goal here is, because we can't get anybody behind the wheel of an EV in person right now, I want you to be able to get a little more up close and personal with some of these cars by pretty pictures instead of actually getting behind the wheel, because that's the best we can do right now. So I've actually structured some of this presentation in a specific order. And for the first part, I've actually structured some of the cars I'm going to go through according to an estimate of the number that I see on the roads typically. And I think you'll find once you are starting to look for them, you'll see them a lot more. I'm definitely guilty of whenever I am out and about driving with somebody else, I'm the person that's pointing out the different EVs. So you may be surprised that you may start doing it soon as well. So with that, just to reiterate what Jessica mentioned, pretty much every major auto brand is committing to an electric future. And here are just some headlines from the past few months, the most recent being General Motors' commitment to eliminate all their gasoline and diesel light duty cars and SUVs by 2035. That's not that far away. And I think that really just showcases the commitment that a lot of these major brands are really seeing electric transportation as the future. And just another quick tidbit before we get into looking at some cars and their ranges. Keep in mind, many drivers in America, this is a national average, drive only about 30 miles per day. And of course, it's going to be different in some more rural areas and depending on your commutes, but you may be surprised by how much you actually don't drive all the time. And so when you consider that a lot of the cars that I'm going to show you are available with ranges that top 250, 300 miles of range, you'd be surprised by how often you may not have to be charging. So starting out, this is definitely the car that I see the most on the roads. It's probably one of the most recognizable EVs. It's the Tesla brands. In this car, actually, this photo was taken along the Kankakee Highway. This is a Tesla Model X, and actually one of our panelists, Howie, is behind the wheel. And you can't quite see me, but I'm in the back there holding on for dear life, because this car is quite fun to be in. And as Jessica mentioned, you know, these cars are really, really fun to drive and to be a passenger in. So there's several different models of Tesla. You know, you'll hear a lot about the Model 3, which is supposedly the mass market vehicle. It's coming in at around a $38,000 price range, and it is an all-electric car. So all of Tesla's products, as Jessica mentioned, there's different you know, plug-in hybrids or all-electric models. This is a battery electric vehicle, or a BEV. So all electric, no gas ever needs to be put into this car. And importantly, I just want to note really quickly, and I'll talk about it again in a minute, but Teslas are no longer eligible for the federal tax credit. They have sold so many Teslas, which is a good thing, because it's really showing that the industry is taking off, that they've actually hit their threshold. So if you're considering buying a Tesla, that's great. Just keep in mind that if you're seeing things about electric vehicles and tax credits, not really going to happen with the Tesla. So the next car that I see most frequently, and is pretty popular, and I know a lot of our EV drivers on our panel have, is the Chevy Bolt. I am also behind the passenger seat of this vehicle. This is driving through Concord with our New Hampshire restaurateur, Alex Ray, behind the wheel. And believe me when I say this car has some get up and go for sure. This has a 250 plus mile range. It's hovering around the mid 30s for a price tag. And interestingly, this car, the tax credit is also phased out for all the GM products, because again, they've sold, they've hit their mark for how many they were eligible for to get that tax credit. So one of the earliest EV models actually was the Nissan Leaf. So here you're seeing a picture. This is not in New Hampshire, I apologize. But the Leaf has right now about a 220 mile range if you're getting one of the newer ones. A lot of the earlier models have shorter ranges, so just be aware if you're considering maybe a used vehicle. It has around a $31,000 starting price for a new one. And that brings me to a great point, which is don't forget about any leased or used vehicles that may be coming off of a lease, because we're seeing a lot of these vehicles actually coming off of leases and are available to purchase as a used car. So here is the Prius Prime, which I've seen quite a few of. And this is actually a plug-in hybrid. So it does have the backup, the gas backup. It has about a 25-mile electric battery range if you're going just on the electric side. And again, remember, a lot of folks are only driving about 30 miles a day. So if you're one of those folks, this could actually potentially handle almost all of your daily driving needs just on electric, but you could also have that gas backup if that's something that really is important to you. Has about a $28,000 starting price, so a little bit lower than some of the all electrics that we've seen before. And as Jessica mentioned, this is different than a standard Prius, which does not have the all electric battery option to get you that 25-mile range. And then this is a car that I've had the personal pleasure of driving. It's a Hyundai Kona, so it's a smaller crossover, all electric, 250 plus mile range. Again, really great on the range. High 30s for the base price. And I thought it was interesting. This one also has a 10-year warranty. So if that's important to you, you might want to look at one of these guys. I also love the color, if I can say so myself. And then, as Jessica mentioned earlier, talking about Volvo, which was the first company to really come out in support of the electric future, you'll see a lot of their Recharge branding. That's the branding for their currently five plug-in hybrid models and their one all-electric model. And they have a goal right now to make 50% of the cars they sell all electric by 2025. That's only 4 years away. So they've really put the pedal to the metal, pun intended, behind making this transition. So going back really quickly to talking about some used vehicles, I thought this was interesting to share. 70% of the vehicles sold in the U.S. last year were used. So if you're looking at some of these vehicles and saying, wow, I'd love to make that transition, but maybe that budget isn't really within the cards for me right now, you don't have to buy a new one. You can definitely consider taking on a used EV. And I just included this as an example. When you think back to the Chevy Bolts that we saw earlier, that starting price was in around the mid to high 30s, but some of the used vehicles are coming in at around 17 to 26,000, which could save you $10,000 to $20,000 than purchasing a new car. I did just want to highlight really quickly some New Hampshire rebates that are available. So if you are in New Hampshire Electric Co-op territory, they actually have a special right now on Nissan Leafs, which, as I mentioned, one of the earlier EV models to come out, very popular, I think it's the best-selling EV for a little while. And if you are considering buying maybe something other than the Leaf, you are eligible for an $1,000 rebate for an all-electric car or up to $600 for a plug-in hybrid. And in addition, you could get up to $300 off of a residential level 2 charging station. So something to consider if you're located in co-op territory. And then quickly, just to touch on the federal incentive side, there is a federal tax credit for up to $7,500 for qualifying all-electric and plug-in hybrid vehicles. And we may hear from some of our drivers as to whether or not they were able to take advantage of those tax credits. And as I mentioned before, the Tesla and GM tax credits have phased out because they've hit their mark for how many vehicles they were eligible to sell for that credit. So now I'm going to touch on some of the up and coming models. And this is very exciting if you're a car person, or even if you just like looking at fancy things like I do sometimes. So I'm going to look at some of the SUVs, some of the pickups, and some of the minivans that are coming down the pike. So here's one if you're a car guru. The Ford Mustang Mach-E is coming out, and that is supposed to have a 210 to 300 mile range. And I can say from talking with one of the reps from Ford, this car is going to have a lot of tech inside. So if you're one that likes the tech side, you might want to consider this bad boy. The Chrysler Pacifica, this is a minivan. For those of you that don't want to give up the minivan, you don't have to. This is a plug-in hybrid minivan, and it has up to a 32-mile all-electric battery. So again, a potential for all of your daily driving if you're staying close to home, maybe dropping the kids off at school. And it's one of the only hybrid minivans that's available right now. Some other SUVs, I just wanted to mention some of the other brands that are out there in case you're, a diehard Jeep fan and you want your next Jeep to be electric. You might be seeing that in the end of this year or early next year. There's also SUVs coming out from Cadillac, more from Hyundai, Lexus, and many more. And shown here is the Cadillac Lyriq off to the left there. So everybody always asks about pickup trucks, especially in New Hampshire. We definitely have a love of our trucks. So I did want to just showcase some of the diversity of pickup trucks that have been announced and we may soon see on the market. So you're seeing trucks from Ford, from Rivian, which is taking deposits now for their trucks, from Lordstown, Tesla Cybertruck, which I included a picture of here. If you have not seen this video on YouTube where they decided to test whether or not the windows were bulletproof or ball-proof, I'd encourage you to watch it. It's a fun one. And then there's also the GMC Hummer that you may have seen during the Super Bowl commercials this past year. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to our first panelist of our local EV drivers, and Ned is going to cover some topics around the costs of owning an EV. So Ned, I'll hand it off to you.
Thanks very much, Brianna, and welcome everyone. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about this car that I'm really excited about. It's been a great car. I'll start off by saying that while I've always been involved in environmental stuff, I'm not really a car guru, and I just wanted something to, we just wanted something that would work for both my wife and I. And so we're kind of like average consumer, I guess. We have this in Tamworth, and we welcome anybody to email me if you want to test drive it, or look at it closer, or just if you have any questions or comments, feel free to email. My email's there. Next slide. So I'm going to run through a few bits about costs and things, and some of this has been touched on. There's a lot of resources online if you just Google things. One thing to compare in terms of costs are the maintenance costs and or a 3-year cost of ownership, for example. There's many sites that talk about this. This is an analysis by Car and Driver. Basically, what it's showing is that when you compare their Mini, for example, the Mini car versus the Mini electric, the numbers are shown here in the top 2 lines. The cost per mile, and for 45,000 miles of first 3 years of use average, you see that the costs of the electric are lower than the costs of the regular gasoline engine car. And that's because of the maintenance costs, oil changes, all that kind of thing. What's amazing about the electric cars is they're like subway cars. If you've been in those, where you just get this kind of whir of a motor, you push the pedal and it goes faster, and you ease up on the pedal and it goes slower. That's what the one pedal driving is about. You can actually come to a stop without using the brakes at all. So the brakes don't even wear it down as much. So there's a lot of maintenance costs saved by with EVs. Next slide. So here's getting personal about our exact real costs. We bought our car July 31st, 2019 in Concord, and the purchase price is as shown, $30,000 essentially. We got the tax deduction, which at that time from Chevy vehicles was half of the $7,500 max. But now, as was noted, Chevy no longer qualifies for the tax deduction. So our net purchase price is shown there, a little over $26,000. We've had no maintenance costs to speak of. We did have 2 breakdowns that were covered by warranty. Our costs for dealing with those were $71. The other cost to consider when you're buying a vehicle is whether you will need a level 2 charger at your house. And that can be $1,000 or $2,000 to install. And you need that. Well, I'll talk about the different levels of charging in just a minute. So also look at the warranty, of course. These are covered, and everything, about them in terms of purchasing them and warranties and stuff. It's very similar to an internal combustion engine car. So anyway, we don't worry about oil changes when we drive by gas stations. We used to, as we got on I-93 in New Hampton, we used to look at the gas station and go, oh, should we pull over because do we need gas before we get on the highway? And then we even did that a few times with driving the Chevy Bolt and realized, oh, we don't even have to think about that. Next slide. So there are 3 levels of electrical charging available. This seems to be pretty standardized. And the gizmos, the actual devices are pretty similar in many cars. Tesla has some different ones, but they have adapters. So this is all worked out now pretty well, even though, it's still fairly early in the whole revolution of electrics. But so there isn't a problem having different charging options. The level 1 is your standard at-home outlet, 110, 120, and you get 4 miles per hour of charging. Okay, so around here our electric with Eversource is of around 18 cents. Level 2 is a special piece of equipment, as I said, $1,000 to $2,000 to put at your house. There's also many of these all around. Tin Mountain Conservation Center has one, for example, and they provide 20 miles of charge for an hour. And then the cost we pay actually using a charge point, which is a commercial kind of station that we tap into sometimes is about 20 cents a kilowatt hour. When you look at the level 3, these are fast chargers, DC fast chargers they're called also. There are fewer of them, but they're in places like near Augusta, Hannaford's over in Portland, Maine, places around. So you can find them with a map and use an app, and we'll hear more about that shortly from others. But you get 90 miles for an hour of charging, and it costs a little bit more, but it's, if you're going on a trip, it's worth it. Next slide. So this is what it looks like at our house. The little charger that comes with the car, you can actually take with you and plug in at somebody else's house. We have it mounted kind of semi-permanently on a pole in that little box in the back there. So this is what it looks like. This is what we plug in when we get home, unplug when we leave. Next. And here's what our fueling looks like. And these are, again, actual numbers. So, I never know quite whether what's advertised is going to come true or not. So I like to do our own numbers based on our rough estimates. So when we looked at our Eversource bills, so we're charging our car mostly at home. When we look at our Eversource bills for the year before, we had, or the 5 years before, that's the $422 that was our average Eversource bill. For the once we got the car and we were charging it, obviously our costs went up. So what I calculated was that a little over $1,500 is the at-home cost of electricity for our Bolt for 2 years and 7 months, the amount of time we've owned it. There were also, when we went on road trips, we used different charging stations and paid for those, and that was another $244. So the total fuel cost for our Bolt for 2 years and 7 months that we've owned it is $1,771.85. We drove 19,700 miles in that time, so we're not driving as much as we did in the past. That's partly because of COVID. But anyway, we got about 9 cents per mile of that. So compare that to the cost of a typical gas car. If you're getting 30 miles to the gallon, you pay $2.75 per gallon. It's a similar cost per mile. Next slide. So the bottom line is that the upfront cost is somewhat higher. Obviously, cost of owning it is low. So I think our maintenance costs are lower, and our fueling costs, even here where we have relatively high electric costs in New England, our fueling costs are lower or about the same. And one thing I'll note is that I'm glad we ended up getting a Bolt rather than a Volt. The Chevy Volt is now phased out, but a hybrid, you have another whole system in your car, an internal combustion engine. So there's two systems that can perhaps malfunction. So I just like the simplicity of having just one system. We love this car. Next, I encourage everybody, consider you can do this. If you've got an interest in this, just take the plunge, plan it out. Yeah. And we're glad to answer questions. And again, if you want to test drive, just let me know.
So
I'll turn it back to you, Brianna.
Brianna, can I jump in here real quick? Because I think it makes sense to just ask this question now that came up from two people. Ned, this question is for you. And they're just, as you can imagine, sort of taking that plunge to electric can be a little daunting. And I think that since you mentioned that you had to break down issues that were covered under warranty, a couple of folks were asking if you could elaborate on what had happened.
So we were worried, one worries about getting a lemon. I think you can get a lemon with an ICE car. You can maybe get a lemon with an electric. I don't know. We didn't get a lemon. There were a couple of issues that just, we were driving and the car just stopped. So we had to get a tow. It was, a breakdown. I know about internal combustion engines. I have no idea exactly what happened. It turned out there was a harness that was wrong, that was faulty in, an electrical harness that was faulty. And in the car. So yeah, we dealt with it. It was a hassle, but I wouldn't hold it against. I don't certainly hold it against the car or the thing. I think obviously the big record. You have to look at the data of maintenance and things like that, and you can do that now with consumers reports and things like that. I think we're generally not seeing Chevy Bolts, considering the numbers that are out there now. We're not seeing a high incident rate with maintenance issues and things like that. So do your due diligence just as you would buy any other car, and look at the maintenance, the big maintenance data that people are reporting to consumer reports and such. But things happen. The reason I put that in was to be honest about it, and also just to say, even though that happened, I'm totally thrilled with this car. So.
Awesome. Also,
They're both related. I see that they were both related. Both were related to the same issue. Both great temps.
All right. Great. Well, thank you, Ned. Now we're going to move on to Gabrielle for our next little presentation.
Hey everybody, this is Gabrielle. I'm also in Tamworth, where Ned is located, and I'm going to talk about sort of like what it's like to get your car and what are the basic things to think about as you're getting started. Some of the things that I wish people had told me about before I bought my Bolt. I was so excited about it that I just went and bought it, and then I had to figure out, how do I do the charging and what does that look like and what apps do I need and all that. So this is pretty basic stuff. I have a similar to Ned, we have the same car. I got my Chevy Bolt in 2017. So it's the first year that it came out. It has 240-mile range. It was the 2017 car of the year, according to Motor Trend magazine. I got a model that has fast charging capabilities because I wanted to be able to charge on the go while I was on the road if I was going to do long road trips. So I paid a little bit of extra for that. I also paid a little bit of extra by buying a level 2 charger through the dealership. So I paid at the dealership, I paid $750. If I'd been smart, I would have gotten it probably for maybe $500. You could probably get them for even less today. But I did get a level 2 charger with the car just to have it done. And my commute has historically been between Massachusetts and New Hampshire, which is about 115 miles. So my range easily covers that. In the summertime, I could potentially go back and forth on one charge. In the wintertime, not so much, because in the wintertime, the batteries don't perform as well and your range lowers a little bit. So that's my commute pattern, and the range has been more than enough to handle that. Next slide. So I'm going to talk about charging at home, how to find your charging stations, how you pay for your charging if you're on the go, and what about those apps and how to get that onto your phone. So most people charge at home. So this is what my charging station looks like. We've got it located indoors in a barn, and like I said, that charger, I paid $750 for it when I bought the car. It's a AeroVironment level 2 charger. So it's wired into a 220 circuit. I can charge my car up to full capacity in about 10 hours. So if I come home in the evening, I charge it up. I usually get a text on my phone at 2 in the morning saying, hey, your car's all charged up, you're all good to go. The installation in my case was free because we were also putting in solar panels at the time. And so we had saved a little bit of money on trenching, and our solar installer said, hey, we'll just, we'll call it even, we'll install your charger. it might cost you somewhere around $500 for an electrician to install a charger in this way. So where it's wall mounted and it's wired in to a circuit, you might have to run some new wires. So that's something to be aware of. Before having this, I was using a regular outlet, and for a Chevy Bolt, if you've run down your battery and you have, 20% left in your reserves or less, you are looking at over a day of charging to get it back up to full capacity. So I found having a level 2 charger has been really, really helpful for me. So I definitely would recommend it. Next slide. So most people charge at home and do short trips like those 30-mile trips, but sometimes you're out and about and you need to charge up. And so the best app that's out there is PlugShare to get a sense of all the charging stations that are available. So when you sign up for PlugShare, you put in your profile, you tell them what kind of car you have, and it automatically knows to look just for those charging stations that your car can plug into. So right now what you're seeing is, the general Tamworth Conway area. You're seeing that there are a number of charging stations up in the Conway area. And then if you look at the route, I think it's Route 91 corridor, you see an orange charging icon there. That's a fast charger. So that's one of those level 3 chargers that Ned was talking about. But you'll notice that there are not a lot of chargers in our area in general. You can see there's a little green charger right by Conway. I believe that's Tin Mountain right there. And if you look a little further down on the map, there's a little blue icon right about where Tamworth is. That's actually my home, because I have made my charger available to anybody who wants to use it to come and charge up at their house. And that's something that PlugShare enables users to do. And I said, oh, what the heck, I'll do that. And I've had 2 people use that in the 5 years that I've been making that available, or not quite 5 years, however many years it's been since 2017. So one was somebody who was making a trip from Maine, and she spent half a day here with her mother, and so they were charging up while she was here. And then there's somebody who uses the racetrack in Tamworth who's charged up a number of times with us. And he has a Tesla with adapters, and so he's able to use my charger even though it's designed for my car, which is a Chevy Bolt. But he has adapters so he can charge up his Tesla when he's here. So that's been kind of fun, actually. And we have solar panels, so it's very, very low cost for me. It was a community service that I enjoy doing. So PlugShare is definitely the main app that I would recommend getting, because you can look across the country at all of the charging stations that are available. You can plan a route and see where you need to be, you're likely to need to be charging. And so where are the charging stations that are on your route as you go, and you can plan your route to make a stop, have lunch, have dinner, charge while you're there. And so it's a really nice app. Do chargers work in Canada? Yes, they definitely do work in Canada. And if you scanned out on the PlugShare map, you would see that there's a lot of charging stations that extend both up into Canada and down into Mexico. And another question here is, what's the difference between a regular charger and a level 2 charger? When I said regular, I just meant like a wall plug. So your car comes with a charger that you just plug right into an ordinary outlet. So it's on a 110 circuit, and it's pretty slow. Like Ned was saying, that's charging at 4 miles an hour. I've got capacity of about 240 miles in my battery. So it would take me about 60 hours to charge up my whole battery on a regular outlet, a household outlet. So for me, having a level 2 charger means that I can charge up in about 9 hours. So that's just overnight. And that's really convenient for me to have at home. And I don't have to really be thinking about it and planning it too much. I just, you know, it's pretty automatic.
Hello? Where are these
And-
questions coming from? I don't see anything. Just asking.
I'm looking in the
They're being
chat.
typed.
I'm looking at the chat.
Yeah.
I,
They're
I,
being-
I've been waving and raising my hand. I'm old, so I don't know if I'm missing something to ask a question. I've had like 90 questions to ask here, but I'm sorry. I don't want to be rude, but
So, and I'm sorry, what's your name?
Scott Johnson, it says right
Scott.
on the screen.
Okay, sorry, it's because it's in presentation mode. I cannot see everyone at the same time. So some people are using the chat feature, and a lot of the questions that have been typed into the chat feature at the bottom of the screen have not been tackled at this point. I'm making a list of them, but we do at the end of the program have time set aside for question and answer, which
All right, that's fine.
at that point, you're welcome just to ask those questions.
No, that's fine. That's
Apologize.
fine. I own a solar company. I thought that this was why I was asked to be part of this, so that, I mean, I have a list of questions. I've been raising my hand a number of times, and I know Brianna, she's an ace. You know, I don't know how can I help here, or am I here for any reason?
Scott, do you have a specific question that I could answer right now? I'm happy to.
I have several questions that I've been, again, raising my hand. I don't know. I've been part of certain Zoom meetings, and, you know, I know that you can click and raise your hand, but whatever. I mean, just a simple question on all of this is how are the level chargers being implemented in the state of New Hampshire? I mean, that's the biggest thing. It has nothing to do with, you know, people buying the vehicles. I get and I see that everybody's wanting to be part of this, but, you know, if the charging stations are not universal, then what are you going to do? I mean, you have Tesla chargers that are doing one thing, and then you have all the others that, you know, I mean, and Ned can probably speak of that. He spoke
So,
very clear
I'll
and
jump in on
concise
that.
about it. Yeah, please do.
I'll jump in on that, Scott. We have not experienced any issue with the charging things. As I said, things are becoming quite consistent, and Tesla has its adapters that work with the other things. I think that at this point, the issue of whether there are enough charging stations for most people is not an issue at all. Most of your charging is done at home when the car's sitting in the driveway. An experiment to do is to look at, you know, sometime measure how many hours your car is actually sitting in your driveway without anybody driving it. It's a lot of hours. So every week. So I think we should move on to have Gabrielle finish, and maybe we can finish up the rest of the presentations, because I think you'll find some
That's
of
a good
the
point, Ned.
answers
I
are
apologize.
going to be covered by other speakers. So thanks, Scott, for that, and we'll move on.
I agree with Ned. I apologize for interrupting. Go right ahead.
Thanks, Scott, for the question. And so just to wrap up, next slide is how do you pay for your charging when you're on the road? So there are a lot of different vendors who have a way to when you go to a charging station, usually it's provided by a charging vendor. And three really common ones that are in our area are especially ChargePoint and EVgo and ChargeHub. All three of them are on apps that you would upload to your phone. So when you walk up to a charging station, you take out your phone, you open up your ChargePoint app, and then you tell them that I'm ready, you know, I want to charge, and it connects you and it recognizes, it communicates with the charging station, and it enables the charging to begin. And you make your payment through one of those vendors. So you've connected your bank account to them, and you make your, and it deducts the charge amount from your bank account seamlessly through the app, so that they're pretty easy to use. What I found when I first started out is because I hadn't gone to a webinar like this, I had no idea about how this worked. So I would go to a charging station and it would be a new vendor, and then I'd have to upload the app, and then I'd have to put in all my information into the app before I could actually charge my car. So so it's helpful to have the main ones upload those apps and be ready to, you know, so when you're going to a charging station, you're ready to actually get your charge from it and have it charge, you know, charge your bank account for it. So the ChargePoint's the main one, that's the most common, but you will also see EVgo, ChargeHub, and then a number of other ones around. Next slide. Depending on what kind of phone you have, you will find these apps on their app stores. So on the Apple, it's called the App Store, and on the Android, it's called the Google Play Store app. So if you go to those places, then you'll be able to find those apps. You can upload them or download them to your phone and get yourself going. These slides are going to be shared later. And what you'll see is that these links are actually live. So you can go from this slide and go right to those links in the slide if you don't know what those are. And I know for a lot of people that, you know, there's steep learning curves about using your iPhone, using your Android. So I just want to add that in there. And that's it, just for the basics of getting yourself going.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabrielle. I'm going to hand it over to Chris now.
Excellent. Thank you. My name is Chris. I live in Jackson. I also own a Chevy Bolt EV. Mine's a 2018 model. Pictured here, connected up to a DC fast charger, or what we've been calling a level 3 charger, or DCFC. A bunch of different names for the same thing. That happens to be a ChargePoint machine. That's located in Lowell, Massachusetts, as it turns out. So that's actually part of a national grid program, and you can find that charger on the PlugShare app, or obviously on ChargePoint's app as well. Just briefly, I bought the Bolt coming from a Honda Civic. I'm a hatchback guy. That was the body type that fits my lifestyle. I throw my bike in the back, I throw my skis in the back. You know, I had this Honda for 10 years, and it finally got to that age, like 20 years old, and you know, it was time. And the Bolt came around. It was out in 2017, and it was the first car besides Tesla's that had the kind of battery pack range that I needed. And it's that simple. And then when I started doing the math and seeing how much I drove, because how rural we are, this really made sense. So that's my brief introduction about my topic, making road trips. You can go ahead and move to the next slide. So these DC fast chargers are typically located quite close to the highway, usually within, you know, hundreds of yards, half a mile maybe at the most, typically. And the charge rate for these fast chargers, the kind of typical fast charger that was out there when I was making this trip, were 50 kilowatt chargers. So rough numbers, that's 6 times faster charging than a level 2 charger. So that kind of gives you an idea. Now there's coming out with People are coming out with bigger chargers, which I'll talk about at the very end. So you kind of have a strategy when you're making a long road trip. I have a Bolt that has a 240-mile range. And basically you want to make the most out of your charging stops. You want to stop and charge efficiently. And one of the problems is that when the battery gets full above 65%, 75%, the charge tapers or steps down, and you're not getting as many miles for every minute that you're sitting on this charger. So it makes sense to actually strategically charge my particular car up to around 65 to 75%, not to 100%. So to make a really time efficient road trip, you drive your first leg usually around 200 miles until your state of charge through battery state of charge is at 10 to 20%. And then each charging stop after that, I would charge to about 65% charge. And then each one of those legs is kind of somewhere in the 100, 110, 120 mile range, kind of depends. I'll talk about the final leg. You can move on to the next slide. So this is a trip that I did from Pennsylvania to Jackson. Those are the mileages. It was in late November. This was a Thanksgiving voyage, and it was chilly when I started, 25 degrees. And so your fuel economy was a little lower in the morning, got better during the day, and then probably dropped off a little bit as I reached home. I did average 4 miles per kilowatt hour, which is kind of the EPA rated range for the Bolt. It's actually a little better. So I did this with 3 stops, and there was 4 legs. And move on to the map. So I started on the bottom left-hand side of the screen at that purple icon. This is a screenshot of the trip planner, which is on the PlugShare app. And I drove 205 miles, as it turned out, to Danbury, Connecticut. And you'll see that I've highlighted there the first stop. Each one of the little bubbles there is a DC fast charger. And you'll notice these are not green bubbles. The green bubbles on PlugShare are the level 2 chargers. These are level 3 or DC fast chargers. So big chargers, 50 kilowatt plus. And you can see I've filtered just to show the stations that are nearby my route and were 50 kilowatt or higher. I happen to have a stop in West Springfield, Mass to pick up some parts. So I stopped at a place in Springfield that was about 90 more miles down the road. And then I made my last stop at the charger that I showed you in the intro picture at the Hannafords in Lowell on the DC grid charger. From there, it's 135 miles to my house. It's actually, right around 135 miles. And you'll notice that as you run up Route 16, there are no fast chargers. So you really have to be cautious making your last stop to get enough state of charge, to get enough charge into the car so you can make it home or have a fallback plan. For me, my fallback plan is to stop by one of the level 2 chargers in case I totally mess up and I'm running out of charge. I can stop by one of the level 2s that's in North Conway area, say Tin Mountain or Mount Washington Observatory. Next slide. So that was that trip. It was possible in 2018. It's certainly possible now. It's easier in the sense that there's more charging stations. Electrify America has been put in some chargers that are in the 350 kilowatt range. But you have to remember your car was designed in 2018. It was designed to take a maximum charge rate. And that was, back then, it was around 65 kilowatts. So you do have to keep in mind if you're buying a car and you're thinking about making long road trips, look at its maximum charging rate and how it charge tapers. That's really important. So as an example, some new stuff that's coming out, took a car, the Ioniq 5. They're saying it charges 5% to 80% in 18 minutes. That's pretty incredible. There is a 350 kilowatt station, I believe, in the Seacoast area. I want to say it's Walmart, one of the Walmart Electrify America stations. So that Hyundai also has a larger pack, and at 4 miles per kilowatt hour, I figured out it can almost go 231 miles. That's about my 100% to 0% range on my Bolt. So that's kind of where things are going in the future. That's all the slides I was going to present. The other two are just for people's information. You can just go right through those and move on to our next presenter.
Great, thanks a bunch, Chris. And just one quick question that we had come through the chat that I think would make sense to ask you now is what do you do when you're stopping to charge? Do you go in and grab a cup of coffee, grab a meal, go shopping? What's your game plan?
That's a great question. Can you go back up one slide if you could? So the first stop was at a mall. It's at the Danbury Fair Mall. It's 45-minute. That was my long 45-minute stop. There's a Starbucks there, and there's plenty of things to do. I mean, even just taking a walk around the mall is great to stretch your legs. The second stop happened to be at a Dunkin' Donuts. You'll notice a theme here. The third stop, actually, what's really great about the Hannaford charger, it's kind of a little secret. It's free. DC fast charger. It's free and it's not time limited. It's also located at Hannaford's. So I'm on my way back. I've been away on a road trip. I have no food in the house. I go in and I do my grocery shopping. Come back out, hop in the car. When I go home, I've got my groceries. That's kind of what I do on my stuff.
Great, thanks again, Chris. And now we're going to turn over to our last panelist, then we're going to get into questions and answers. So I'll turn it over to you, Howie.
Thank you. I don't have any slides, and this is going to be probably pretty quick because I'm going to talk about how easy it is to drive an EV in the wintertime up here in the North Country. I've been driving a smart electric car, which is it used to be a brand of Mercedes, but they've pulled it into their fold and they're now badging these little cars as Mercedes. Tiny little commuter car designed to be sold and driven in the city where you can park in unbelievably small spaces. And it's a two-person little commuter car. It's got quite a bit of room in the back, surprisingly. It's much bigger when you're sitting inside than what it looks like from the outside. My wife and I went away for a 3-week trip and flew out of Portland, and we loaded all our luggage in that car. So it's more practical than some people think. But we did buy it back as a company car when I was working at the Mount Washington Auto Road. And we primarily, it was my commuter car to and from work, and we use it to drive around down to North Conway, up to Berlin, Bethel, you know, that kind of range. So I've actually never taken it further away than the range of the battery. And it was an early one. It's 7 years old now. It's got a 90-mile range in the summertime. Because of what that battery needs to do in the wintertime, keeping the battery warm, you know, giving yourself some sort of comfort inside, keeping the windows defrosted. It's got some fabulous seat heaters. My range in that little car is about 45 miles in the wintertime. So certainly it's not for everybody, but as was shown earlier, 30 miles is an average day for people. And I come home and I plug it in at home. We happen to have solar panels, so I'm driving for free. I actually bought it from the company when I retired back in May, and because I loved it. I put snow tires on it in the wintertime, 4 snow tires. They're not studded. It has never stopped me. The only time I've ever been stuck with it is right here in my own driveway, and I got out because it's a tiny little car, and I pushed it off the ice patch and away we went. When I bought it, it was in the winter, and I was driving an Audi at that time with 4 studded snows. So I didn't get rid of that Audi until January, when I was confident that this car could take me back and forth in the notch. And I have never had an issue. I drive in all kinds of snowy weather. I've driven home when they haven't plowed the roads. It's you know, like most electric cars, the battery is in the pan underneath the seats. So the battery, the car is balanced weight-wise, and the weight is down low. And in my case, it's a rear-wheel drive car. The engine and the transmission are in the back over the driven wheels, and it's just a fabulous little commuter car. I would buy another one if I was in the market, in my case, as a second car. But I suspect what I will do in the next year or two is traded up to a Bolt or a Hyundai Ioniq as they become better and better. It's all about the tires. If, you know, no matter what you're driving in the wintertime, you're not going to get around on summer tires, or even most of us aren't going to get around very well on all season tires. So a good pair of winter snow tires up here in the North Country, and you're going to go, and it's fine. We do have a level 2 charger at the Auto Road. We've actually got 4 of them now, 6 if you count the 2 over at the hotel across the street. We were one of the first people in northern New Hampshire to put in a charger because I wanted to take away any perceived obstacle to bringing an electric car up to Mount Washington. And electric cars on Mount Washington are fabulous. You get what hasn't been mentioned, which is interesting. You know, this one pedal driving is because of the regenerative braking. Whenever you lift off the gas, your motor, which is driving the car, becomes a generator, and it pushes a charge back into the battery. Well, when you're coming down Mount Washington, you can recover quite a bit of the battery that you went through on the way up. And so it's the regenerative and aggressive regenerative braking that allows this one pedal driving to be possible. I was given a Bolt for the month of January a couple of years ago by Mike Mercer down at Banks Chevrolet. They're a fabulous dealership, and to try out. And I had never experienced what I would call a full-size electric car at that point, and it was absolutely fabulous. It was a wonderful car. I saw a question come up for me, but it disappeared before I
Yes, it was a Russ question for you about it.
quickly heat up. What does that mean?
Russ.
Oh, that's true. Electric cars, you know, if you get into your regular ICE car, internal combustion engine car, and you start it up, or even worse, you've got a remote starter and you've started it 15 minutes before you leave, so you can burn up 15 minutes of fuel for nothing to get the interior heated up and to get the frost off your windows. An electric car, you turn those items on and they're there. You've got heat immediately. Your window is defrosted in maybe a minute, if that. Yeah, good point. Thanks for reminding me, Russ. That's all I've got.
Great, thanks, Howie. We're going to move into the Q&A portion next, and I think Nora's been tallying up some of the questions that have come in through the chat, and then we'll open it up to just audience questions as well. So over to you, Nora.
Yes, so I will, I'm gonna read through the questions that have come through, and you know, between Brianna and Jessica and our panel, if folks just want to sort of take this first one, it might be best geared towards Brianna or Jessica, and I don't know how serious the person who asked this question was, but are we, you know, with new vehicles and new makes and models coming out on, you know, sort of every day, you know, newer innovations, what is it looking like for electric snowmobiles or ATVs? Are there any companies out there that are, you know, exploring that?
Jessica, I'm happy to take a first stab at that.
Yeah, go ahead, Brianna. I was going to say.
Yeah, so I don't unfortunately know a lot of specifics off the top of my head, but I actually just recently hosted an event that was coordinated with Quebec, which also has a very high percentage of electric vehicles. And they have some companies in Quebec that have really started to investigate those options for snowmobiles specifically. So I believe that we're going to be seeing those coming pretty soon. I just don't have an exact timeline or price range yet, but I'm happy to do some research and try to put some information up on the Drive Electric New Hampshire website.
Okay, and with that sort of mention of Canada, and I know this came up at one point, and they were mentioned, but are there any, and this will go into the next one too, just in terms of compatibility with chargers and, you know, with northern New Hampshire, you know, bordering Canada, are the chargers compatible? Like if folks were to drive when we're able to cross the border, you know, is the charging infrastructure similar?
So I can start out. Yes, it is my knowledge, to my knowledge, the charging is similar. However, you do need to be aware if you have a non-Tesla vehicle, they will not be able to charge at a Tesla only charging station. Whereas a Tesla vehicle usually comes with an adapter that can allow it to charge at any Tesla or non-Tesla station. So just be aware, especially if you're going on, as Gabrielle mentioned, you have the PlugShare app, that should help narrow down which charging stations are available to you, and it shouldn't show you any charger that you wouldn't be able to charge at. But when you purchase your car too, your dealer and your owner's manual should show you exactly what type of charger you have and what it's compatible with.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in here too. So there's 3 different levels of charging. Your level 1 and level 2 uses a standard, what's called a J1772 charging port, and it has a certain design style, and that plugs it. We call that universal. Pretty much every vehicle can accept that port style. Level 3 is where it gets a little bit different, because there is obviously Tesla has their fast charging level 3 chargers, and that's unique to Tesla, and they have an adapter that they can use anything else that they come across. And then there's the 2 different styles of heads that are for the different, the European versus the American automakers, and it's the CCS and the CHAdeMO. And a lot of what we're seeing is that these fast chargers are equipped with both, so that if you pulled up to a universal fast charger, you would be able to find a port that fits your vehicle. And Canada is the same. There's not a unique standard for them. Scott, I see your hand raised there. I don't know if you want to jump in.
Yes, I do. I'm not sure where this whole conversation is going about, you know, this has been a great discussion about vehicles. And I'm like, for example, Howie, I love what he just said. I have some questions for him, but as a solar company owner, what is the goal here? Like, are you, I just scrolled through all the comments and the questions. Like I have a number of questions that I wrote down about what we're looking to try to figure out here. I mean,
yeah, and I think, solar is going to be very important as a renewable energy source to kind of support the grid. I think that I saw a question come through about how clean is our grid, right? So in New England, we're part of what's called the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which means more and more of the energy that's going to feed our grid is coming from renewable sources. And I think solar is going to play a role there. But this is, this technology is growing, obviously. Solar is maybe getting some new opportunity as well as we're moving forward. And I think there's going to be a role there, but it's just kind of a wait and see. And I think all of us on the panel that we've given opportunities to connect with us. So you're welcome to reach out, I think, after and ask questions as well. I'll punt this back to you, Nora.
Yep. Scott, did you have a follow-up on that?
I do, really quick. And it's a simple question. Number one, I'm sure a lot of people would like to know, because once again, if Howie is offsetting his charging via his solar, I would love to know how and what that math is. I mean, anybody can buy a vehicle and, charge it and whoop-de-doo. If he has solar panels on his house, I need to know how I can equate that to the people that are purchasing solar. I mean, that's what people want to know, right? Am I wrong?
If they know what kind of car they're going to get and what kind of
no. It doesn't matter what car they get. It's
yeah, it does.
Well, no, it doesn't. It's the panels they purchase.
They don't have to answer your question.
Well, I mean, okay, I apologize if I was rude, Howie. Please tell me what size wattage panels you have, how many you have, and how you're offsetting your charging, and also what level charging, because that's another question that I have. How we integrate that charging station into the home. I'm just looking to help clients. That's it. That's all I'm asking.
So,
I put my email address in the chat function if you can find that, Scott. And you can email me all the questions you got.
Thank you,
and-
Holly.
And I don't know, Gabrielle, I know that you have solar panels on your house, and you said that when they were doing the installation, they put in the charging port at the same time. Do you want to just, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, just to say for me, Scott, one of the things we were trying to maximize our savings all at the same time, and we knew that in the long run the solar was going to save us money. Like, we would have to pay it off, but eventually we'd be making money off of our solar panels eventually, but also that we'd be reducing our fuel costs, because I was going to be charging my Chevy Bolt, excuse me, on off of our solar. So that was a big benefit for me. My solar installer wasn't that aware, plugged into the cost savings potential that I might see from charging from my solar panels. But as a result, I think initially we undersized the solar panel design. And then I said, I'm seeing really big charges here. He's like, well, you're charging an electric vehicle? Well, we're going to have to go bigger. So that was an awareness, challenge for both of us. I think we needed to be communicating a little better. I see your hand up, but just to finish up, I think like helping as a solar installer, helping people think through, like, what's your long-term electricity demand going to be? And therefore, what should you be sizing your solar panel to do? And do you need battery backup? Is that something that you might need? And the technology on that is changing so much. And now we're talking about electric vehicles becoming a substitute for home generators, potentially in electricity outages. And that's a whole nother topic I'd love to see a webinar on, because I'm looking into that. But I think there's a whole bunch of services for the home that solar installers could be owning if they were really all over the complex, the entire ecosystem of people have cars, they have battery backup systems in their houses, and all the other electricity needs that they have. And if they're going into air source heat pumps too, increasingly electrifying their homes.
Yes, thank you, Gabrielle and Scott. I want to apologize because I think there may have been some confusion just with, as the majority of folks here are, interested in just sort of what's out there as vehicles, and certainly how solar ties into this is a huge part of that financial piece. And you'll see like half of our panelists have panels on their house, which certainly offsets the cost. And I think it was really helpful, Ned, you having that slide in there about, without panels, what your Eversource bill is. I want to just get to some of these other questions that had come through earlier on. One of them, I think, was really helpful. Just what is the current EV life expectancy compared to a traditional internal combustion?
So there's no silence here. I don't know if either of you know.
I'll jump in on that. We have a hybrid electric car, which is 20 years old this year. The Honda Insight, original Insight. Hybrid electrics hybrid gas electric cars have been around for 20 years or more. And those all are running on battery systems with electric motors. They happen to have a gas motor as well. So those kinds of cars tend to last, plenty of time. The question, those older batteries died, and often a car that's 20 years old will have had one major battery replacement, which in that hybrid electric gas car cost, I think, about $2,500, so quite a bit. And but the systems are pretty well tested now, pretty well proven, and there's a lot of companies involved. So the reliability and has only improved. And so I think, we don't know 100% yet. Certainly we haven't owned the car long enough, but I'm expecting it to last as well as a gas car.
All right, great. Thank you, Ned. Another question that had actually come in before the program, and I'm glad to see it came in again. Thinking about our lifestyles and what we're using our vehicles, not just for getting from point A to point B, but sort of what we're transporting as well. I don't know if any of the EV owners can speak to sort of transporting, using an EV to with a canoe or kayak rack, and how how that worked and how that might impact the efficiency of the vehicle. Do we have any? And I don't know if we have anyone who's had that who's had that experience, and even potentially if you are not one of our highlighted panelists, if you are an EV driver joining us, and if you've put a canoe or kayak rack on your vehicle.
So I mean, I'll say that I put a kayak on my car regularly, and just the wind resistance will reduce your economy, not insignificantly, like about 15%. And I've got small whitewater boats on my car, and that's a 15% reduction just from that wind drag that creates. So it's a pretty noticeable reduction. Hauling a trailer around your car is quite significant from what I hear from colleagues who have electric vehicles. So then you would need a much larger battery in order to do that.
All right, thank you. Does anyone else have any experience or want to chime in on that one? The other question, another one of the questions that we have are, if something does happen to vehicle, sort of just routine repair or maintenance, and where you might need to get that done, potentially, do most mechanics are they willing to work on these? Do you have to take them to the dealership or to specialty mechanics?
I think Ned answered that in an earlier
chat
answer pretty thoroughly. But my limited, again, experience is that if it's something that's simply mechanical, like brakes, I take it to a regular shop. If it's something to do with the battery electric system, then it has to go back to the dealer.
Okay, great. And then one along the lines of dealership, where can folks buy or test drive these vehicles? Because I know that they are not necessarily available at every dealership. Not all of the dealerships around here would have electric vehicles. So I don't know if, if Brianna or Jessica, if you want to mention, or if folks want to, within the Mount Washington Valley, want to talk about where they were able to purchase their vehicle.
Sure, I can chime in really quickly. Through Drive Electric New Hampshire, we actually work with quite a lot of auto dealers around the state. So as been mentioned before, Bank Chevrolet is a great one. We work with dealers in Manchester, Nashua, on the Seacoast, up into the North Country. New Hampshire is not what we call a zero emission vehicle state. So that does tend to affect sometimes the availability of vehicles that dealers are able to get onto their lots. So what I encourage folks to do sometimes is if you're interested in test driving a particular make or model, feel free to reach out to me and I can give Nora my email address to publish maybe with the recording. And I'm happy to put it out to my list of dealers and just ask if anybody has one on their lot that they'd be willing to just put aside for a test drive. And also, as some of our panelists have said, I think you'll find a lot of folks with EVs are more than happy to take anybody for a spin or maybe a test drive because they really love their cars and would love to see more people enjoy them. So those would be my my recommendations, but I think you'll find as these get more and more popular, you'll start to see more and more of them and more varieties on lots around the state as well.
I add a comment on that. I would encourage anybody that's shopping for an electric car to go to the dealership that they would normally go to, even if you know they're not carrying electric cars, to ask about them and push it. And, you know, why aren't you? It's the coming wave. Just show interest. I think if they see the demand, they're gonna come around a little quicker. It's really the dealerships up in this northern New Hampshire are tragically uninformed on EVs, and you know I see that routinely, and I hear that from other folks that have bought EVs up here. Is they don't know what they're selling, and a lot of times the people are going out of the area to buy their EV because the dealers here just aren't into it. And that's going to change if they start to see demand, I think.
Yes, well, I saw early on there was a message that Littleton, one of the dealerships up in Littleton, had discounted their Chevy Bolts to make room for the 2021 models. So it sounds like they're at least up there. And there's a note that Lorelei says she just test drove the Mach-E Ford in South Paris, Maine, which was amazing. So we know it's out there. It looks like in Laconia. Another question that just come in was, it says Vermont and Mass have state tax rebate programs for the purchase of EVs. Is there any talk of New Hampshire offering an incentive?
I'll just jump in
No.
there and say that we're not aware of any, but there have been some interesting Senate bills that have come out in the 2018 legislative session. One in particular formed a charging station, electric vehicle charging stations infrastructure commission to kind of look at informing and advising on things that we can do to support EVs and EV infrastructure in the state. And so there is certainly, you know, talks and efforts and consideration for it. In fact, I saw a comment about Volkswagen funding, and yes, you know, the state of New Hampshire did receive funding, and the 15% that we're allowed to set aside for electric vehicle charging infrastructure, the governor did commit that full 15%. And the intent is to ultimately, you know, build out some EV charging, some for DC fast charging across the state. We did actually have a funding opportunity that came out about 1.5 years ago, and unfortunately did not result in any complete applications. So that is in the works of being revised and hopefully be put back out again. So we should start seeing infrastructure being built out in that capacity.
Jessica, just a follow-up question to the state infrastructure question. Are any of these, you know, sort of, you know, with the increase of, you know, making charging stations available, are any of them tied to solar arrays?
Not that I'm aware of. If unless the actual site host is intentionally doing that, I don't think that the effort to use any of the Volkswagen funding or any of the state funding to co-locate these with solar, but you know, it's something to consider. And I think, you know, as we're looking for more renewable sources to clean up our grid, you know, it's definitely, you know, a smart way to be thinking.
All right, great. Thank you for that. That I think is just. All right, I'm just reading what Ned just put in public chargers. We're going farther from home. That I don't know if, hopefully we've tackled, the majority of the sort of big questions for those, for folks looking to take the jump into electric vehicles, and making that switch. It sounds like, really the best thing to do if this is something that you're considering is to get yourself behind the wheel of one, and try it out. And we are, we're so glad to have so many, experienced EV drivers right here in the Valley who have offered up, not only, to be able to look at, and explore their vehicles, but just, resources for additional questions you may have, after sort of digesting all of this information and all of the piece, all of the various pieces that go into making it, fit into your lifestyle. I don't know if anyone has any additional questions, that we didn't tackle in this. The program will be available on our website or on our YouTube page afterwards if people want to go back through and look at some of that information again, as well as getting some of that contact information. You are also welcome to reach out to me at Tin Mountain for the contact information of any of our presenters this evening. I can certainly connect you to them. But I would like to thank all of you for offering up your time and your experiences and sharing with everyone. I feel like there's a lot to consider and a lot of information out there, and we really appreciate pulling it all together.
Nora?
Thank you.
Nora?
Yes, Russ.
Green Energy Times at Hannaford's, the constant articles on the state of EVs and where they're at. So I recommend everybody get that. And if you can't find it there, give me a call, because I do the distribution. I've got extra copies here.
All right. Yeah. So in the Mount Washington, if you're located right here in the Mount Washington Valley, the Green Energy Times, they're usually, which comes out every, I think, 2 months. Every 6 weeks to 2 months, there are usually copies in the entryway of Hannaford. And there are, yes, lots and lots of resources about what's going on in Northern New England, of all sorts of renewable energies, but oftentimes lots of EV updates. So yes, thank you for that reminder, Russ. And thank you all for joining us. Thank you particularly to our presenters. And yes, I hope everyone has a lovely evening and enjoys another wonderful sunny day tomorrow.